remember that first night. The sky was the color of wet ash, and the wind carried something old with it, something heavier than time, sharper than memory. I'd heard the stories, of course. Everyone had. Black Hollow, the village that swallowed itself 50 years ago. People said it was cursed. Some said it was haunted, but no one ever said it out loud twice, as if the name itself carried teeth. I wasn't there to chase ghosts. I was a writer, or at least I used to be, until the words dried up, until the silence in my head started to feel louder than anything I could put on paper. Black Hollow was supposed to be my escape, but it became something else. It became my prison. The road into the village had long since been overtaken by roots and moss. No GPS, no lights, just the crunch of old gravel and the weight of knowing I was the first soul to walk this path in decades. I had rented the only standing house on the edge of town. The rest had collapsed under time and grief. But this one, it waited, and when I opened that door, it didn't creak. It breathed. Inside, everything was still. Furniture covered in dust, curtains like brittle bones. The air smelled of wood rot and forgotten tears. But I settled in, pulled my bag down, sat in the center of the room and listened. Nothing. No wind. No birds. Just an absence that seemed to press against my eardrums like static. I should have left that night. I didn't. The floorboards in the hallway groaned. Not once, but twice. Deliberate. Rhythmic. Like something moving just beneath me. I laughed it off. Told myself it was the house settling. But the third groan came louder. And this time, it ended with a whisper. You finally came. I stood frozen. Not with fear, but recognition. I didn't know how or why, but I was certain of one thing. This house knew me. This house knew me. That was the beginning of the letters, of the whispers, of the unraveling. Not of a place, not of a story, but of me. Sometimes the past doesn't stay buried. Sometimes it leaves notes. The morning came slower than I remembered mornings to be. Light didn't break in Black Hollow. It seeped like a stain through cloth. Pale, sickly, and barely enough to chase away the weight that the night had left behind. I hadn't slept. Not really. I just closed my eyes and listened. To the house. To the floor. To the silence that wasn't silent at all. It was breathing again. Around noon, I began exploring the house. Not out of curiosity, but because sitting still felt like drowning. The place was bigger than it looked from the outside. Staircases that led nowhere. Rooms that echoed too much. Mirrors that didn't reflect quite right. But it was in the hallway, that narrow stretch of warped floorboards and peeling wallpaper, where I found the first clue. The first piece of her. A loose plank. It wasn't hidden well, like a secret, but placed like an offering, waiting to be discovered. I pried it open, and there, beneath decades of dust and silence, was a faded envelope. Off-white, fragile, and on the front, in trembling ink, were the words, "For the one who dares to read." I should have left it there, walked away, but I didn't. My fingers trembled as I opened the flap. The paper inside was yellowed with age, the handwriting delicate and elegant. It read, asterisk To whoever finds this, my name is Elena. I was 18 when I wrote this. If you're reading these words, then it means he never came back. And I'm still waiting. Asterisk. My throat tightened. I read it again. Asterisk. He said he would return before the first snow. But the snow came and melted, and still I waited. They told me to forget, that he had left like the others. But I knew the hollow took him. And if I can't leave, then maybe neither can you. Asterisk. The last line was smudged, as if tears had blurred the ink. I stared at the paper, heart pounding like a drum in a cave. I whispered her name aloud. Elena. The candle beside me flickered, and from somewhere deep in the house, the sound of a door creaked open. I didn't move, didn't speak, didn't blink. I just listened, and then I heard it. He never came back. A whisper, barely audible, but not from the paper, from the hallway. The house was not empty, not anymore, and somehow I knew this wasn't the last letter I would find. There were more, dozens maybe, each one waiting, breathing, watching, just like her. Some love stories never end, even when everyone else does. The second letter came the next day. I wasn't looking for it, not actively, but the house knew where to lead me. A cold draft from the parlor, a floorboard that creaked differently. Every sound, every shadow was a breadcrumb, and I was following. It was hidden behind the back panel of a drawer, warped wood, splintered and stained. This envelope was darker, sealed with something that looked almost like wax or blood. And it was heavier, emotionally, somehow, like it carried weight beyond words. The handwriting was shakier this time. It read, Day 36. I haven't slept. I can't. Not with the voices. They mimic his laugh sometimes. Sometimes they call my name in his voice. But when I turn around, there's nothing. I swallowed hard, already dreading the next lines. I think the hollow is trying to keep me. I write these letters so someone remembers I existed. Even if he doesn't. Even if I fade like the rest. I sat on the floor, back pressed against the wall, the letter trembling in my hand. There was no name this time. No Elena. No date. Just pain, raw and untended. That night, I dreamed of a girl in a white dress, standing in the hallway. She didn't speak. She didn't move. She just stared at me with eyes that looked forgotten, like she'd watched too many years pass without being seen. And when I woke up, the same letter, the one I had read and folded away, was sitting on my chest, open. The next letter was in the fireplace. Blackened edges, charred corners. It had almost been destroyed, like someone tried to burn it, but something stopped them at the last second. This one began with, To Zion. The name struck like a match in the dark. Zion, the boy she waited for. Asterisk, you said the hollow was just a ghost town, a broken place for broken people. But now I wonder if we were the ghosts all along. Asterisk. That line stayed with me. Were they dead before they disappeared? Or did this place simply unmake them? Was I being unmade? I started writing in my own notebook that night. I wrote Elena's name again and again, just to feel like I wasn't the only one speaking to her. But the house had other plans. Around 2:14 a.m., Every candle in the room blew out at once, and from the far end of the hallway, I heard the faint sound of music, an old gramophone playing a sad, slow melody. I followed it, but there was no gramophone, just another envelope, nailed to the wall with rusted wire. This one said nothing on the outside, but inside was a single line. Do you still think you came here on your own? I stood there for a long time, gripping the letter in one hand, my heart hammering. And for the first time since I arrived, I began to wonder if Elena had written these for someone else. Someone like me. Some houses don't forget. They mourn. And if you listen closely, you can hear them grieving. By the fourth day, I stopped pretending I was alone. Something in that house knew I was there. Something old. Something wounded. And worst of all, something waiting. It wasn't just the creaks in the floorboards anymore. It was the way mirrors refused to reflect me fully, as if something else was standing behind me, just out of frame. It was the paintings on the wall, faded portraits whose eyes follow me across the room. One of them looked like Elena. Another looked like me. I began noticing things I hadn't seen before. Doors where there hadn't been doors. Stairs that led up and never came back down. The clocks in the house all ticked out of rhythm, some even backward. Time here didn't just move differently. It bled. That afternoon, I found the next letter. Not hidden this time, not tucked behind walls or under wood. It was pinned to the ceiling above my bed. Its corners were burnt. The ink smeared like it had been written in a storm. I climbed up to get it. My fingers trembled before they touched it. And when I unfolded the page, I saw the words. Asterisk date 89. I don't know what season it is anymore. The window shows snow, but I feel heat pressing against my skin. The house keeps changing. Doors vanish. Mirrors lie. Last night, I heard a man cry in the walls. And I think he was me. Asterisk. I sat with that letter for a long time. The ink bled into my fingertips. And I swear, for just a second, I could feel her sorrow inside my bones, like it had slipped off the page and into my chest. Later that night, the hallway outside my room grew longer. At first, I thought it was exhaustion, maybe madness. But when I counted the doors, there were 5. There had only been 3 before. One of them had no knob. Another bled light from beneath the crack. And the third had a handle made of something white, smooth, and unmistakably bone. I opened it. Inside wasn't a room, not really. It was a staircase, spiraling downward into a hole that the light refused to enter. But at the top of that staircase, resting like an offering, was another letter. Folded, fragile, damp. It read, Asterisk day 142. I went deeper today. I shouldn't have. They whisper my name, not like Zion did, with warmth, but like they're grinding it between their teeth. I saw shadows without bodies, and one of them had my face. Asterisk. I slammed the door shut, but I could still feel her watching, not through the walls, from inside me. Like her memories weren't just being read, they were being transferred. I ran back to my room and grabbed my notebook, desperate to anchor myself, to write something, anything that belonged to me. But the first page had already been filled, and the words were not mine. They read, Day 1. I arrived in Black Hollow today. The village is quiet, but I know something is watching me. My handwriting, my style, my ink, but not my thoughts. The house was rewriting me. That night, I didn't sleep. I just lay in bed, eyes wide open, counting the seconds between the heartbeats I wasn't sure were still mine. And somewhere deep inside the floor, I heard her whisper again. If he had finished the letters, I wouldn't still be here. Some truths aren't found. They're buried because the people who knew them were never meant to leave. I didn't sleep after the hallway folded in on itself. Sleep had become dangerous. Dreams weren't dreams anymore. They were memories that didn't belong to me. And in those memories, she was always watching. Not with fear, with hope. I began searching the house, room by room, as if I could take back control. A desperate instinct, a false sense of power. But the deeper I searched, the clearer it became. The house wasn't hiding things from me. It was showing them in its own time, in its own way. And when I removed a broken plank from behind the bookshelf in the study, I found something no blueprint ever mentioned. A door. No handle. No lock. Just there. Etched into the wood were letters carved by hand, shaking and furious. Leave U.S. in peace. So I did the opposite. I pushed. What I found behind that door wasn't a room. It was a chamber, circular, made entirely of stone and soil. The walls were lined with broken portraits, torn dresses, children's shoes, cracked candle holders, relics of a forgotten life. In the center was a pedestal. On it, a lockbox wrapped in rusted wire. I didn't have to touch it, because sitting on the floor beside it was another envelope. This one was larger than the others, thicker, as if it contained more than just paper. When I opened it, a photo fell out. Faded, yellowed, but still visible. Elena. Her eyes clearer than I imagined. Her smile shy. Her hands holding something close to her chest. A folded piece of paper. And beneath the photo, the letter. Asterisk day 201. The chamber was always here. I used to believe it was where the hollow kept its secrets. But now I know this is where it keeps its stories. Everyone who came here left something behind. A memory, a name, a reason to be forgotten. Asterisk, asterisk. I wrote these letters so someone would hear me. But the more I wrote, the less I remembered my own voice. Was my name ever really Elena? Was Zion even real? Or were we just echoes of the ones before us? Asterisk. I held the photo close. It felt warm, alive, like she was still here, watching me, waiting. That night, I sat beside the pedestal, unable to move. The chamber didn't feel hostile. It felt heavy, like it carried the weight of every forgotten soul who had once believed someone would come looking for them. And now, I was one of them. I heard something then, not a voice, a sound, weeping, from above, from the hallway, from the ceiling, the same soft sobbing I'd heard in my dreams. Only now it was real, and it was moving, closer. I whispered into the chamber, "Are you still waiting for him?" And from the darkness, a whisper answered, "He never read the last letter." Some letters are never meant to be found, because they don't end a story. They start a curse. I didn't leave the chamber for hours. maybe longer. Time, in Black Hollow, had long since collapsed into itself, folded like paper, crumpled like memory. I remember sitting beside the pedestal, the photo of Elena pressed to my chest, her letter burning in my hand like it was made of fire. And then, the wind shifted. There was no wind, yet the flame of my candle flickered sideways, toward the far corner of the chamber. Something was there, something watching. I stood slowly. The candle's light stretched into the dark like a blade, and I saw it. Another box, half buried beneath rubble and time, carved into the lid with shaking hands, or maybe claws was one word. Last, I opened it, and inside was not just a letter. It was hundreds of fragments, torn pieces, half words, ink smeared with tears or blood. I couldn't tell which. But there, in the center, was the only page still whole, folded neatly, perfectly, like it had waited for years to be held. I read it aloud, because somehow I knew she needed it to be spoken. Asterisk day unknown. I don't know who I am anymore. I write these words not for Zion, but for whoever is left. If you're reading this, you've come too far. The Hollow doesn't release those who finish the story. It keeps them. It kept him, and now will keep you. Asterisk. I looked up, breath caught in my throat. The chamber had changed. The walls were pulsing, the soil moving like it was breathing, and the pedestal was gone, replaced by a mirror. Not cracked, not dusty, just clean, and in it I saw myself, but not who I was. The reflection looked older, worn, fractured, and behind me, Elena, smiling, but her eyes were bleeding ink. I turned. No one there, only silence. But when I looked back in the mirror, she was closer. I ran, out of the chamber, up the stairs, through halls that now had more doors than walls. The house had grown like a lung inhaling my fear, and every room echoed the same whisper. Finish it, finish it, finish it. I collapsed in the entryway, gasping, hands trembling, the letter still in my grip. My notebook lay open on the floor, but the pages were filled, every one of them. My handwriting, but not my thoughts. He came to find the story. He stayed to write it. Now he is part of it. I screamed, tore at the pages, and beneath them, tucked into the back cover of the notebook, was one final envelope, sealed in black wax. I opened it slowly, and this time, the letter wasn't from Elena. It was from me. Asterisk. You should not have read this far. You should not have come to Black Hollow. Now that you have, you belong to it. Asterisk. And at the bottom, one last line. There is no last letter, only the one that writes itself, with your name. Some houses don't trap you. They give you a choice. And that is the cruelest curse of all. The moment I read the final line of the black sealed letter, something changed. The house exhaled, not like a sigh of relief, more like the sound of dirt being shoveled into a grave. And for the first time since I arrived, it spoke, not in whispers, not through letters, but inside my skull, with a voice that sounded like mine, and hers. You finished the letters, so now you must choose. The walls groaned, the floor cracked beneath my feet. Paint peeled from the ceiling in strips like old skin. And the front door of the house, the one that had never truly opened, stood wide. Ushuldeveran. I could have, but I didn't move, because across the room, another door had appeared. Old, would burn black, and behind it a voice, a hum, a name, Zion. The truth hit like ice water down my spine. Zion never left. He hadn't been taken by the hollow. He had made his choice, just like I was being asked to now. The house was a vessel, a memory machine, a broken time loop stitched together by grief and letters. It didn't just feed on pain, it preserved it, because forgetting is mercy, and Black Hollow doesn't deal in mercy. I stood between two doors. One led out, back to the world, back to the silence, but the letters would stay unfinished. Her voice would continue. The story would never end. The other led deeper, where the others went. Zion, the shadows, the forgotten, a place not even death could reach. I heard her voice then, not whispering, begging, if someone finishes them, I can finally sleep. The floor beneath the exit door began to splinter, roots crawling like fingers, wrapping the doorknob in veins. The house had been waiting too long. It was losing patience. I stepped toward the blackened door, the one that felt like smoke and memory. And just before I touched it, I whispered, Elena, was it ever real? And the voice answered, not hers, mine. It doesn't matter. You chose to believe it. My hand touched the handle, and everything stopped. No sound, no wind, no breath, just a pen and a piece of blank paper, and a voice that said, now write the last letter. Every story ends in silence, but not every silence is empty. I don't remember how long I stood there, hand on the blackened door, the weight of 100 letters pressing into my chest like a grave I'd been digging for someone else, only to realize it was always mine. The house didn't move anymore. It didn't groan or whisper. It simply waited, like it already knew my choice. The pen felt heavier than it should have. It wasn't just ink I was holding. It was her voice, his regret, the memories of everyone who had ever walked through the hollow, hoping to find something and losing themselves instead. And now I understood what the final letter truly was. Not a message, a sacrifice. I sat at the wooden desk by the window, the one that hadn't been there yesterday. The paper lay in front of me, blank, staring up like an open mouth waiting to be filled. And outside the window, the trees bent toward the house. Not from the wind, from anticipation. They knew what was coming. I began to write, not with control, not with craft, with memory. Each word flowed like it had already been written long ago. Not by me, by the house, by Elena, by every soul who thought they could outrun their past. To whoever reads this, I was not the first to come here, and I won't be the last, but I came willingly. That's what makes the hollow so cruel. It doesn't trap you. It waits for you to choose to stay. I came looking for a story. Instead, I became part of one. As I wrote, I felt something lift from the walls. The pressure eased. The air became still. And in the distance, a soft voice exhaled. Thank you. I stood. In a mirror across the room, no longer showed me. It showed her, Elena, but not the ghost. The girl, smiling, soft, whole, and behind her stood others. Dozens, maybe hundreds, men, women, children, all once forgotten, all now remembered. They weren't trapped anymore, because their story had been finished. The house trembled once, a shudder of finality. Not destruction, release. I stepped outside, and for the first time since I arrived, the air felt real. Cold, alive. The village around me was still abandoned, still broken, but the silence was different now. Not heavy, not haunted, just quiet. As I walked past the edge of Black Hollow, I didn't look back. I didn't need to. The letters were written. The truth had been told. And the curse, if that's what it ever was, had lifted like morning fog. Years passed. I moved far away. Started over. People asked me why I no longer wrote books. Why I lived alone. Why my windows stayed open at night, even in winter. And I would smile and say, because the silence needs room to leave. But sometimes, when the wind is just right, and the trees bend toward my window at 2:14 a.m., I hear a voice whisper from the shadows. Will you read them again? I never answer, because I know if I do, the house will come back, and somewhere, far out in the woods, if you walk deep enough into the dark, you'll find a crooked wooden sign that reads, Welcome to Black Hollow, and beneath it, barely visible, do not open the floor.